So over the course of, a number of months, groups charged with redeveloping the downtown area have been meeting with citizens in a variety of public meetings. And at a couple of the more recent, larger scale meetings, we've got some feedback on the comment cards and on question cards, asking if there could be some Q&A sessions that would be in smaller group formats, where people in the downtown neighborhoods would have a chance to ask any questions that they have of some of the representatives of the organizations. And so that led to this series of meetings. Tonight is the fourth. We had two on Saturday, one last night and then one tonight. On Saturday, we did two areas in Plymouth-Zeckles. Yesterday, we did the western part of the area of downtown just east of a little freeway spur, and then tonight we're doing this area east. And as we said in each of the meetings, that because the focus of the meeting is to let individual residents have a chance to ask questions, we start out taking questions from the neighbors who actually live in the areas that are the focus of each night's or each day's meetings. And so again tonight we'll start with folks who live over here. So that's the purpose. The format is very conversational. My name is Robin, and I'm sort of the moderator or facilitator, and so I'll help as questions come in, help direct them to the right person. I'll keep a running list of some of the questions and comments that have been made. And when all the meetings are finished, we'll collate all the questions and answers and comments and put them up on the Downtown Amarillo website. And I'll make sure you have that web address before you leave. At the table are questionnaires and comment cards to get your feedback and your questions and comments in your own words about your neighborhood specifically or about downtown in general. And we're going to start as we did last night and just ask folks to introduce themselves, and if you live downtown, just tell your street, which area of downtown you live, so we kind of get a sense of who all the neighbors are. Irma, could we start with you?
Irma Eras, and I live on the 16th and Harrison, right at the start of the historical district.
Okay.
I'm Charlene Taylor, and I don't live downtown, but I have family that live downtown.
Okay.
I'm Johnny Johnson. I live in Pleasant Valley, but I grew up in this area. My father has a home over there. It's been in our family for 50 years.
Okay.
And I own property in that area.
Okay. And your name's Johnny?
Johnny Johnson.
Good to meet you, sir. Yes,
I'm
sir.
Commissioner Perez, and I live over in Seminole, close to Bowie, but I represent part of that's up here close to Lincoln,
Okay.
my precinct,
Okay.
territory. Yes.
Thank you.
Charles Pace, I live at 1409 South Lincoln.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
James Allen. I don't live in the target area, but I'm on the Amarillo Independent School District Board of Trustees, so
Okay.
that all of that's in our target area.
That's fine. Okay, so interested in what's
Yes.
going on.
I'm Beth Duke with Center City of Amarillo. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for coming tonight.
I'm Jimmy Presley. I'm the owner of MS Business with property rights for I reside at 1514 South Christian.
My name's Kelly Shaw with the City of Amarillo, and glad to be here, and I'm just here to listen to comments, questions, or concerns.
My name's Melissa Daly. I'm with Downtown Amarillo Inc. and Sadie's Kelly, here to listen.
And feel free, if it would enable you to have better access to the maps or just see people better, if you want to turn your table sideways, feel free to do that, or leave it as it is, whatever. I want to get started asking a question about what it is that we want to have downtown. And so I'm gonna start with the folks for whom this is their first meeting, and ask you, as you think about downtown today, and what's here and what's not here, what are some things that come to mind that you know you'd really like to have downtown? And Johnny, may I start with you?
Well,
Yeah, not, I'm sorry to just put you on the spot.
yeah, to say what I'd like downtown, I'd like to see the downtown area revitalized, but I'm talking about the downtown area on the other side of 10th Street, and, yeah.
I've been waiting for that to happen, actually.
Yikes. Oh, the easels.
Thank you.
Yeah, the easels kind of,
It's not the 40-foot phone.
no, it's not a very big tripod there. Sturdier.
Yeah, much good. I think she ought to switch the smaller, is that smaller than that?
I think they're all the same.
Okay.
It's just those are on bone core,
Okay.
so they're not floundering.
And so revitalize, I'll write it very carefully.
Okay, yikes.
Okay.
I think you said revitalization north of 10th, is that right?
Another tip, okay.
Right, and back probably from Harrison back to the tracks. From
Okay.
10th to the tracks and maybe Harrison or so back to the tracks, to revitalize, not to change that much, but to revitalize it. And I think it should go to a vote of the people, what we do want to do with it, not a committee. I don't think enough has been brought out. We were brought into this thing as a last minute, I don't know what you'd say, addition to this, because initially, I believe most people were under the understanding that the downtown Amarillo meant downtown Amarillo, not to include anything probably past 10th Street. I've lived here 66 years. Downtown was downtown. This wasn't downtown. This is a neighborhood area. The streets aren't heavy enough. They aren't large enough to take care of the heavy traffic that you're going to put downtown. We need to, the off-street parking that you're talking about, that you're going to eliminate. We have a lot of multiple family dwellings, especially in this 6, 7, 8 block area that were designed for Model A Fords. This narrow streets, narrow garages, limited driveways. You make us start parking on the street. There goes our mailboxes, our mail delivery. If you get the...
Well, sir, can I ask you to pause for just a second? I want to make sure to capture those comments and those thoughts, and I'm going to make a quick note of a couple of them to come back. But what I'd
Okay,
like
the
to...
off-street parking.
Yeah, and what I'd like to gather first from us is what we want to see downtown, and then we'll come back around.
Well, I'd like to see it downtown, and I don't
Okay.
consider this downtown,
Okay,
anything past 10th Street.
okay. All right,
Yeah.
thank you, sir. Yeah, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the other stuff in just a second.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am, what would you like to see downtown?
I like to see the same thing, I mean, I like to see the same that it is now, and just renovate the buildings,
Okay.
and have the antique look downtown. But have businesses, more businesses, businesses in about this ballpark that they try to put us. It's just a waste of taxpayers' money. And the reason I say that, and I wish people know what I'm going to say what I feel about it, not because I'm against it, I'm against it. But you're going to put a ballpark out there, and then you have to spend $17 to $24 million for the ballpark. Not only the ballpark, if there used to be a ballpark, then you have to go into AAA or AA associated with the major leagues. You're going to have to apply for it, and it's going to cost you in the millions, $5 to $10 million to get a farm club. And then when you get all that done, you're going to have to go to a family outing. It's going to cost you in big bucks. You have to pay big prices like you do at the Civic Center. And people can't afford it. Our people can't afford that. And I think
And sir, if I could ask you to pause that for just a second.
Okay.
Since on this first pass through, reading things that we want in downtown, and I made a note of that, and we'll come back just like
Okay.
with Johnny to
But
ask about
But
that.
the important thing that I like to see It's Amarillo. Amarillo Beach, it is like, for example, I can give you an example, and I've been down there and I love it. The stockyards. The stockyards, there's more people at the stockyards than downtown Amarillo in Fort Worth. Because they know that it's old, they go see a lot of antiques, they see the old cow town.
Okay, so a historic emphasis
Yes.
on what created Amarillo.
Could you flip that around a little bit, or
Yes, I will.
Yeah, we're trying to prop it up.
It might be dangerous.
Would you, what's
It's
your,
already fallen.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
do you want to come sit over here? You can see better. It's already fallen
We're
off.
just trying to keep it very carefully set.
That's all right.
We have historical buildings downtown, the Crest, Whiting Kirk, Woodward, all those. I mean,
Herring.
those places were, when I was young, they were pretty.
Right.
And they can be,
Is that way again?
yes.
So downtown buildings redeveloped or restored.
And the Herring Hotel would be included too. I work at the Herring Hotel, and I think it's a beautiful building.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, sir, what are some things you'd like to see?
I'm kind of like Johnny, whatever, I mean, I'm not that interested in downtown Amarillo at all.
Okay. Okay. Yes, sir?
Well, I think a vibrant downtown is important to the overall health of the whole city. You're going to need things that will draw people in bulk, a multiplex movie theater, what I call a restaurant row, where you have varieties of restaurants and night entertainment, museums, antique shops, anything that you think of when you've been in other cities that while you're not at your convention or while you're not visiting with the relatives that you would like to go downtown and see. Trolley rides or horseback rides around downtown on a covered wagon, anything that gets more people downtown. Highlights are, in Western heritage is a big part of Amarillo, so our Western heritage, and any other things from our past and present that we think would be of interest to the masses.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir, I didn't get your name.
David Greens.
David Monroe.
Hello. Sorry I was late, I couldn't find it.
Yes.
I walked all around, I
It's a pretty big
got a
campus.
grand view of the Methodist Church.
Sorry about that, sir. So what would you like to see downtown that's not here now?
Well, I really don't care. I mean, I'm kind of like Johnny, I live over here on 10th Street, and I don't consider that part of downtown.
Okay.
It's my neighborhood, I've lived over there 25 years. And if they want to fix up the downtown, who's going to pay for it? I mean, if it's going to come out of my taxes, forget it. Let the private enterprise, if they want to come downtown and fix it up, and do all this renovation, let the private enterprise take over.
Okay.
Let the free market do its thing. It's worked in a lot of other cities. I don't see why we have to spend the taxpayers' money to revitalize downtown when the free enterprise probably take care of it better than what the city planners could.
Okay, well, and I hear a definite question in that we can put to the folks who are here tonight to help answer that. And we'll also take that down as a note about what your opinion is about this and what you'd like to see.
What is your title, or what interest do you have in this?
I have no interest at all. I'm a pastor and meeting facilitator. My firm is in Houston, and we have been introduced through some folks, and it has been suggested that I come up as an outside advisor who moderates groups like this all the time.
So you're getting paid to do this?
In part of it's pro bono. Yeah, my expenses are had so far have come up with lists about what they want downtown that look a little bit like this, that mention some of the same things. Yes, sir.
And then that was my thought about the downtown, you know, how I felt about it. But to do this, I like to see, instead of the taxpayer do it, the investors. I don't want taxpayers to do it. That's my gripe. Don't use taxpayers' money on these projects. If you want to build downtown, build it by investors and do it, but no taxpayer, no tax money.
Yes.
And so, okay, and so with this as sort of a baseline of some of the things that people can are hoping to see downtown, let's take a couple of questions, and I'm sorry, it's David? David? Let's go ahead and start with David's question about how downtown redevelopment gets paid for. And who would be the best person to answer that for us?
I mean, I could take a stab at it. Growth that happens on the outskirts of the city, where the city pays for infrastructure to help those growths occur. Likewise, downtown has to be a public-private partnership as well. So it needs to, it's going to take public dollars. Downtown was built, 100 plus years ago, and that infrastructure is aging. It makes it challenging for development to occur. And if there is no public investment, the private generally won't come because the cost is too great to develop an existing infrastructure that's 100 years old. And likewise, we as taxpayers pay for new development to continue out. We pay for those arterials, we pay for the water, the sewer, the fire stations, police stations, library, et cetera, for new development. Initially, likewise here, it's going to take an initial public investment, and after that initial public investment, the private will come and the private will pick up more of the cost. And that is actually the premise of the tiers as well.
And so I know that there is it the Fisk building that's being turned into the Courtyard by Marriott?
Right.
How can you give that as an example of how
Well, it's actually a very good in-the-ground example. And
okay.
The Marriott is a public-private partnership. Private and out-of-town company came in to redevelop that historic building. But it took some public resources to help make that happen. And one of those resources was some tiers funding. 90% of the increment that occurs from that redevelopment goes back into that redevelopment. The tiers also help fund the sidewalks that are being built in front of it, as well as there's some federal historic tax credits. So that's a very good example, and that hotel will be opening here pretty shortly, within about a month or so, and it brought 40 jobs to the city of Amarillo.
Okay, and so the city helped repair or make the sidewalks better, and
it was the tax increment reinvestment zone. And so that's not just the city; that's several.
It's all the taxing entities that participate in the tiers.
Just want to be sure the right person gets credit.
Okay, and so then that went into sidewalks, but the building would have been, the work on the building was done by private dollars.
Well, yes, 90% of the increment, a tax increment reinvestment zones means that as property values rise from a base value, which was set in 2006, the taxes from the incremental increase in value can go back into that tier zone. So for that particular project, we anticipate, of course, the appraised value on the Fisk building to increase.
Right.
From 2006 to, in the future, because it's redeveloped.
Right.
And so the increment that occurs from that, the taxes on that increment, 90% of that increment can go back to the developer to help in the development costs.
Okay.
And Center City also gave some money,
Oh,
a very smaller percentage,
That's right.
but we did give some money we'd raised over the years to help them do a neon sign, because neon is what was traditional on Polk, and we wanted to encourage them to spend that extra money so that it could be
So it looked
beautiful
historical,
neon.
like it,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we love neon.
Yes, sir, and then we'll come to you.
If I wanted to spend the night down there at that Marriott, what would the room cost?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
I was on a tour today, and they asked the director of sales that question, and she said they had not yet set their rates. So I truly can't answer. We're to open, they're to open the end of next month. And it's going to be 107 rooms, so I'm excited because that means sales tax dollars and that coming into the city once they open.
I don't think I can spend the night there on my salary.
I don't know.
I know some.
$100 more than that.
I'm not sure.
At least
She has-
probably 200 a night, or 300.
Well, isn't that TIERS money, basically, wouldn't it have been going back to the different taxing entities, like the city general fund or something like that, as opposed to being saved for downtown development? Wasn't that tax money
Can I
to go?
just address that partially?
Sure.
Well, I can address that for Amarillo as a school district, and the answer to that is yes and no.
Yeah,
And the reason why is because most people don't realize the way our taxing structure is based, that over 50% of what you pay in tax dollars actually go to Austin, Texas. And with their
but
infinite
that's
wisdom.
still our tax money.
Right, well, what I'm saying is, you're paying local taxes, that you get to see about 40% of it actually stay here in Amarillo. So does AISD receive any benefit if we weren't in the tiers? Actually, no. It's about a wash for us. So at least this way, those incremental taxes that are being reinvested actually stay here in Amarillo, whereas they're not going to Austin, helping to fill a $21 billion plus deficit that may occur.
I hate to knock your school district, but those people moving out of the downtown area is basically what killed the downtown area whenever they burned the old building down and didn't rebuild downtown. That
Well,
took,
sir,
what, 200 or 300 jobs out of the city, out of the downtown. That never
That was
come
well
back.
before my time, so
Right, but it
I was
did
in school
happen.
then.
Yeah,
You
you,
mean
We were in school then.
We were in school. Was that the old administration building
yeah,
over
it
there?
hadn't been that
Yeah,
long ago.
8th and Washington,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that
I
was
know.
one of the,
70s?
yeah,
40 years ago.
that wasn't long ago.
Okay. Well, you're right.
It is for me.
Right.
And so, earlier, Johnny, in his comments, he had at least two questions. And so let me see if I can summarize them real quickly. One was about losing off-street parking in his neighborhood. And one was about the disparity between infrastructure in the sense of the street, his street, where he lives in his area, is not rated to be able to withstand the kind of traffic or the heaviness of traffic that some of the commercial area thoroughfares would have. And so if we can, let's take those two questions.
Some of the regular city streets,
Or
those
some
are
of the regular-
designed for Model A Fords. You get cars on both sides of the street, and almost any of the streets through here, you have one lane for passage. And if it's a large truck, you don't even have that.
Yeah.
And so with what I've seen from this plan, you're going to try to abolish all off-street parking. Well, that's great. I hate to see people park in the front yard too, but out of necessity in some of these areas, that's the only way. Everybody today has two cars.
Right.
Back when these streets were designed in the 20s and 30s, you had a Model A Ford and maybe one to the family if the family could afford one. And that's when these streets and homes were built. You're talking about, like I say, those cluster mailboxes are a mess. So whoever gets one of those in their front yard is going to have 24-hour traffic and the vandalism that comes with them. It's bad enough that we've gone to this street side delivery anyhow.
Well, so let's bring this to the question then. Is there a plan to take away off-street parking, and is there any plan to replace parking?
Well,
Yes.
I was curious first, a lot of, I was gonna maybe,
Do you want to come up here?
no, there's really the redevelopment, you might point out that redevelopment, area in purple where the land use study was done. A lot of people are talking about that study, which talks about a possible multi-purpose venue that could do not only ball games, but lots of different types of events, but it's well north of that residential area. And as far as abolishing all of the off-street parking, I'm not exactly sure where you got that, but
Out of your book, out of your design standards for this area, off-street
Design
parking.
standards don't address parking.
I'm sorry?
Design standards don't address parking.
are you talking about,
I'm talking about one of the 3 or 4 things that's been passed in rapid succession over the last 6 months.
so that's kind of why I'm here,
Yeah,
because
well,
I
that's
kind of
good.
want to know where you're coming from on that.
Well, I know it's
I don't
in
know
there.
where that is.
Yeah.
I know that we're talking about in that land
I
use
think it was
study.
the next to the last ordinance that was passed,
Urban design standards.
urban design standards. I believe that's where it was,
Yeah,
with the
the-
brick sidewalks and the little $4,000 lamps. I believe it was in
I
that
just want to
one.
make it clear that design standards don't address parking, and there's no.
They didn't?
They do not.
In those discussions, I recall them talking about someone just getting approval to put parking in their backyard. So maybe I was at a wrong meeting, but that was a city commission, I thought.
Parking addressed anywhere in the design standards.
They did address
Well,
some of the, well,
No,
I
there's,
had my book.
I think
Yeah.
I think it did, it's
Yeah,
got curb.
yeah, it did.
Something about curb parking, I
Curb,
remember,
yeah.
do y'all have the urban design standard book
I
here?
think what you're referring to is, there was some discussion about, some of the businesses that have, or it could be residential.
It
I
did
guess.
include
If you,
residential, I believe,
If you wanted to turn your entire front yard into a
into driveway.
parking, yeah. There was some talk about that 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 most of these residences in this area have your traditional driveway and that kind of a thing, and we thought in order to maintain the character of the neighborhood, that getting rid of the front yard and asphalting it in or concreting it in with a surface parking lot wouldn't be maintaining that neighborhood character, so maybe that's what you're talking about.
Well, it still gets to the off-street part, or the putting us out on the streets as opposed to parking, like I've seen in a lot of places, on the yards and everywhere else. And I believe it was addressed.
What it says is that, and I imagine there's probably already an ordinance as it relates to parking in your front yard. There's not, parking lot. What it basically is saying is that, what we heard from a lot of residents was a concern in particular about commercial and industrial kinds of uses that come in and use structures or tear down homes and put in other structures and pave the entire front lawn, or what was a lawn, to use for parking or for whatever, just to not maintain it.
Well, you're saying in this meeting that we don't have to worry about that part of the enforcement, that that's not going to happen to us.
Well, what I think she was saying, and
Commercial area, but we're talking about residential.
yeah,
But
Right.
did you know that a lot of this area is.
With the zonings that should keep out the commercial.
A lot of the area that we're talking about tonight is actually zoned industrial.
Really?
yes.
I thought it was 1F2,
No.
right down on
In
Lincoln
fact,
Street.
it's right up here on this.
That was the one I was sent out the notice for.
Okay, and so this one right here,
Right.
this one right here
That's
Single
light
and multiple
commercial.
family.
is light commercial.
Light commercial and industrial.
And then,
On to what street? I can't see your map, so
Let's see.
tell me what
Here.
street.
Let me bring it first over here so she can mark it.
Pierce.
Ms. McKellar can open
That's in the
it.
Lincoln,
Okay.
Johnson,
Johnson, yeah.
Johnson is
Johnson,
light
Lincoln.
commercial, yeah,
Buchanan,
up to
Pierce.
the alley. But there's no residents there.
basically, this is,
Two or
most of
three.
it's
Not this
He's
way.
telling you guys, he's telling you.
So here's the answer.
Okay.
this basic, can you see this line here?
Yeah.
This is Buchanan Street right here. So the half block that faces Buchanan west to the highway, the dispersal streets, is zoned light commercial. Anything east of the alley is light industrial.
Now, when did that change?
Is that because of the railroad there?
That's
Well,
been
I've
there
got
forever.
letters since then and been up to City Hall over it, because I still get, the Johnson Street is light commercial.
I know that's the curb. It did talk
This
about the
is, this has
curb.
been here for a long, long
I think it's
time.
on
I
page
worked
19.
in the 70s, so it wasn't then.
And so because it's zoned
I'm
partially
gonna,
commercial and
Johnny,
partially
can you get that book over there
the
so we can
design
put
standards we're trying to address.
her book,
What book?
that urban design,
The,
Melissa's,
subject of-
Melissa's book.
Watch out! I can see it going.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, do you
Those
have
are
to leave?
dangerous.
You don't have to leave, do you?
Yeah.
What time?
let's put it right here.
30.
We'll carry around.
You got it right there.
Yeah.
No, that urban design book, I
Yeah.
just wanted to know if we could look at it real quick, because it does say code in
We're gonna
there.
have to leave in a few minutes. Can I ask a
If I
question?
could just
Oh, well, let's let
follow up with you, so, because I want to make sure I'm hearing this right. In some of the other meetings, we've heard concerns about parking cars in the front yards and those kinds of things.
I'm not in favor
Is that
of it.
okay? Or are you saying
I'm not in
that you're
favor of
okay?
it, but I'm not opposed to it to the point to see ordinances to have this changed, because this is a pretty densely populated area. There's a lot of multifamily dwellings, apartments, and duplexes, and several families living in one house.
Required any kind of a non-single family residential use?
Well, if we was like
Like an
commercial,
apartment, huh?
if we was on like commercial, then it wouldn't apply to us anyhow,
Well, no, I'm just.
for the zoning
Well,
ordinance.
just, yeah, but follow me on this. For the resident, we're talking about the residential area right here.
Right,
And you're right, there are some apartments and those kinds of things. For those type of land uses, we would require off-street parking. So for residential use, houses,
right.
single-family houses.
About every other house is an apartment down
Right,
here.
so, and we require off-street parking for houses too. That's why you have driveways and that kind of
Right.
thing. So in these neighborhoods, are you saying that you wouldn't mind somebody taking out their yard and putting in a paved
If
parking
it
area?
meant keeping me with a street that I can drive down, I'd certainly allow them to pave the whole thing, asphalt it. It'd look better than the bricks and be cheaper. Yeah. Let them have access to their vehicles and their homes and keep the streets clear. I am in favor of that,
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear.
just for appearance.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to follow up with one of your questions. But I know, Irma, you said that you're going to leave.
Yeah, I have to leave and I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Right now, when you go downtown, and I mean downtown where the banks and the civic center and all that, anytime you have to go do business at City Hall or go to the civic center or the library or anywhere, it's free parking, easy access. Very rarely do I have a problem finding a parking space, and I don't have to pay. When you have this stackable 6-story garage that you're planning on putting downtown, and you want to go to the baseball or you want to go to the civic center or any of that, now you're going to have to pay to go park? See, now when you go to attend the civic center, you don't pay. So if you got that garage, are you talking about now we're going to have to pay to attend the civic center?
I didn't say that.
I mean, is that what that,
Yeah, but will
when
it
they
happen?
put the garage,
I would envision.
are we going to lose access to free parking?
When,
Because now you don't even want us to bring our cars. I can't ride a bicycle. I never even learned how to ride a tricycle. I can't see myself going downtown in a bicycle. So that means that a family that goes to an event at the Civic Center is now going to have to be paying for parking along with a ticket to take a family to go to any event.
And so let's turn this into a question.
And it's a question.
Have any policies been set around how parking will be handled?
well, I think, in terms of paid parking, there's a lot of ways to handle that. Some cities actually use a TIF or the tiers in this case to help subsidize parking to allow, for example, free evening and weekend parkings. For City Hall, for example, I think it's important that we look at short-term surface parking for people that want to come in and pay their bills and pay the water bill or whatever. And those things need to be taken into consideration. Nobody's talking about taking away all surface parking. That's never been said. If you look at the land use plan, you'll see surface parking on there. I don't think anybody's suggesting that that structured parking would be the only available parking. But those are details we have to work through. It's an interesting dynamic because when you talk about the things you want to revitalize downtown, you want to bring back historic buildings, you want to bring these buildings back to life. That means more people, that means more traffic. You have to deal with those, we have to deal with those issues, and those are something we have to.
I'm concerned about, right now, a family, it makes it more affordable to be able to take their family to an event at the Civic Center. Let's say the circus is in town at the Civic Center, or the hockey, but now you're paying for parking and you're going to pay for a ticket. It makes that much harder for a family to be able to afford to go downtown to an event. So I'm concerned about the parking situation, whether they're going to have to end up paying more to be able to take their family somewhere. And my other question before I leave is, when you're going to be doing all these things downtown, you're going to have a lot of construction and torn streets and all that going on. That's going to be rerouting traffic in other directions, and that means traffic's going to go down the residential areas, because when we bought our house in 2000, there was something going on downtown where they had, or somewhere where they were detouring the traffic, and it was going, and we had this constant parade of cars from something that was going on downtown, and that's when downtown was passed on the other side of 12th Street. And we had a lot of, it didn't last for about 2-3 months, but it was a lot of traffic to get to I-40 down Harrison.
I would just say on the parking, there's lots of different ways to handle parking, and in some cities, like Melissa was saying, they have worked it out with the parking lot owners to have free nights and weekends, and that works in a lot of places. In fact, one of the newest parking lots downtown at 7th and Taylor, the one that has the big red heart on it, it is owned by one of the banks, and during the daytime, only those employees can park there, but then after night, anyone can park there, and all the restaurants use it. So there's lots of different ways.
Because when now we go to San Antonio, I went for my high school reunion. I could not believe how far away I had to park to go to the that Henry B. Gonzalez Coliseum or whatever that thing that they have. And to find parking, you could not find a space that you didn't have to pay somewhere. Whether it was somebody has a house with and they use a little parking area there and they charge you. I mean, we ended up walking blocks just to find, and I don't want to see that happen downtown, to where right now you want to go to the Marathon, you just drive up and sure enough you find a parking space nearby, or Acapulco's or something, you know, and that's not a problem. I don't have a meter to pay, I don't have a parking lot to pay.
Sure, Irma, and so let's put your second point to a question, which is, when there's construction downtown, are there plans about how traffic will be rerouted, or is that under study, or what's the plan for traffic during construction?
Well, we're just not nearly that far down the road, no pun intended. You know, this is.
Well, you better think about it before they go down my street.
Well, one thing I would say is you can look again at the Fisk. During the construction of the Fisk, we sometimes have had to close off a lane or two of 8, and it has been, for the people trying to get to a couple of buildings, sometimes they've had to circle the block or something like that, but there are going to be some construction, fencing and things like that we have to work around, because like the Fisk, it was such a big project. We've had fencing around it now for several months.
That was one thing being done at one time. Well, if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff in the Civic Center area, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on, because you're not going to take years. You're going to be building all over the place, and that's going to be close in a lot of the major areas to get to I-40. So anytime something like that happens, people have to find another way out, especially with the 5 o'clock traffic.
I would not envision us ever completely closing completely closing Pierce, Buchanan, Fillmore, and Taylor.
And there are also federal
Textile wouldn't allow it,
highways.
first of all.
Yeah, the federal highway system's
I don't
pretty
remember
strong.
what 2000 was being, why
I'm
they,
trying to think too.
but it was
I wish
right
I
after
could
we
remember.
bought our house. We bought it in May of 2000, and for several months
so-
afterwards, something was closed down there where they had to come down to residential areas.
Okay. And so, Dave, if I can come back to you, and Irma, thanks for sharing your questions again.
Okay, better
Are
get
there any questions you have about your neighborhood? Since,
I got something in the oven. Our friend died, and we have to make a meal to take.
Whether it's about zoning or neighborhood services, again, since tonight we're really focusing on the eastern part of the residential area, east of the freeway, are there any questions you have about any of the services downtown or any?
I heard you say public services or neighborhood services. We have a light pole over there that's been down for several months.
Okay.
And I dare say that if it was in another part of town, it'd already been replaced.
Do you know which intersection?
Yeah, at the intersection of 16th and Lincoln.
16th and Lincoln?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we'll make a note about that. Kelly, is there a way
Is
we
it
can turn that in?
traffic?
No, it's
No, it's a street light. Okay, that's what I wondered.
Street lights out or the light is down?
It's knocked down.
Yeah, it got hit by,
Not the poles, it's like.
Yeah, the whole
Oh,
pole. Yeah, it's broke off and sticking up.
it's broken
Heck
off,
of
it's laying
Yeah,
across.
it was.
I
Took
dare
out the
say
water
if it was
meter.
out on the west side of
Fire
town,
hydrant.
it'd been replaced months ago.
Overnight,
Okay, so we'll make a note of that and turn that
I
in.
mean, that's not why I came,
Well,
but
sure.
I just happened to think of it. And,
Have you told anybody about it?
yeah, well, I called the city, and then, they said, well, we'll get it taken care of, and then waited about a month, and then somebody said, well, you need to call the utility company, so I called them. And, I got somebody in Minnesota, for Flexel, and the guy, he looked through his files, he had me on hold there, or on the phone for about 10, 12 minutes.
Yeah, right now.
And finally, I said, is somebody there? And he says, yeah, I'm just trying to find who to bill this to. I said, can I have your name? And I said,
Hey,
hey.
just say no.
I said, no.
Don't mind me.
I said, I can tell you where the pole is. It's down. It's at 16th and Lincoln. And he says, no, that's Amarillo, Texas. I said, yeah, Amarillo, Texas. We'll have somebody look into that.
Now, all of our street lights, XL maintains them,
Right.
and the city pays the electric bill basically on them. So anytime there's a problem with them, XL has to be the one that either you or us or somebody, that they're
Yeah.
the ones that we have to go through and to get it done. But I can make some calls and see if I can get somebody.
I know we had
to do something.
several police cars and the fire department and ambulance and I don't know what all out there whenever the incident happened. I just figured between all those people, somebody would, report it.
I'll check.
Is that 16th and Lincoln?
Causeway above the curb and anything else you want.
I seen that.
Traffic engineering.
Well, and so, sir, if I can ask you, the same question I just asked Dave, are there any concerns you have about your neighborhood, or about city services in your neighborhood?
Well, we got a street light there at 15th and Lincoln that when it rains, it goes out and it's out for 3 or 4 months before they ever get it back on.
Okay, so 15th and
And
Lincoln.
where I live, you need a street lamp every night.
Right,
Yes, sir.
Pretty doggone needed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
damn sure is.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there any, do you like your neighborhoods, and why I'm asking this is important to me, because like I said, that area is zoned light commercial and industrial. And I've driven through that neighborhood quite a bit, and there are some nice homes, good, really interesting architectural type houses and that kind of thing. Do you think that neighborhood, first of all, do you think the zoning's wrong for that? Would you rather see residential zoning there? Or are you okay with the commercial zoning? And I don't need to throw all these out there, but is there anything do you like the way the neighborhood is? Is there anything you would like to see improved?
See, it's light industrial, If that's the case, why do they have the signs up there, you know, no truck traffic, you know, with slash through it? So if it's light industrial, why would they have those signs up?
Probably because, again, going back to, I forgot who said it, but some of the streets there aren't made for that, and they would rather them take a preferred route. But,
Yeah.
but that still doesn't mean that, you know, some other types of businesses that could locate there.
Yeah. I don't have a problem too much. I know they put in the storage, those,
Those little shipping containers.
yeah, just, on the other side of that intersection there, 16th and Lincoln. It actually kind of cleaned up that area over there. I think it was used to be an old vacant lot out there, which was a baseball diamond out there. We hadn't been used in years, but you know, some of the changes have been good, and some not so good. I don't have it. It's as far as I know, it's always been what, light industrial, or when was it changed? Or commercial.
So you're okay with that? You don't think that we need to look at maybe residential zoning or anything like that?
Well, I kind of have mixed feelings about it. I know the alley, we get a lot of traffic through the alley there. It seems like, back behind my fence, it's a pretty favorite spot for people to throw out their old mattresses, spare tires, and whatnot. And then on the other side of the alley, it's more industrial. And I know that there's like a warehouse deal over there. There's a lot of waste or whatever, and they don't seem to have their own trash receptacles or whatever.
The city used to
We got a lot
require,
of complaints about a porta potty type business that was.
Yeah, there's one of those too.
Kind of a
But
problem, but
It's on McKinnon.
oh yeah, that's on the other side of the I-40. What are you talking about?
And what, I'm sorry, what were you
the
saying?
city used to require that commercial businesses had their own large commercial trash containers. And for some reason, over in that area, these commercial businesses are all using the residential trash containers. We wind up with everything from spare tires to toilets to anything you can imagine, plus all the people from the Santa Fe dropping their trash off as they come in from Tanglewood. So,
Really?
oh yeah, it's nothing to get there. They leave their bills in them too, just so you know who they are.
Oh, goodness.
But, yeah, I mean, but those commercial areas should be compelled, used to be, under the city ordinances, was compelled to purchase the big, large containers, the big ones, not the residential type. And
Why
some,
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Why don't they have more of those tire pickup deals like they used to have? Me and my friend, that year they had it out there at Pleasant Valley, we went through Lincoln, Buchanan, and part of Pierce and picked up 50-something tires out of the alleys. And there was, I don't know how many hundreds out there whenever they did that. But they had that one time, and that's the last time they've had it that I know of.
Was that through Keep Amarillo Beautiful, Dusty McGuire's thing, or was
They
it
just
just
had
a?
a free tire
Free
pickup
tire
deal.
But that wasn't the city though. That was an organization that was doing it.
That's what I was trying to find
Yeah.
out. I think it was.
Well, they had a bunch of semis come in there and get them, I know that, because I seen them loading them.
So, see, that's something that, okay, you're asking for a city service, so guess what? There's gonna be a cost associated with that, so how would it be paid? See,
I'll tell you.
she had private funding that paid for that, but if the city does it, they're taking it out of some resource.
Let me tell you, I called the city about, somebody went down my alley and dropped off 42 of them one night.
Did you get a license tag?
No, I didn't know it till the next morning.
Yeah,
Okay, I called the city about it, and you know what they told me?
they don't pick up tires.
That's right.
I know.
You need to call them to the dumps, to the landfill. You know what they charge at the landfill?
Not all.
$4 a tire. You think I'm gonna pay $4 a tire for 42 tires?
I
No.
didn't say you should.
but it happens right in through there.
That's
Quite
right.
It
frequently.
happens all over town,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Like dump ground for
I think those kinds of things, I think there's some room for discussion on, certain things that, I don't know, maybe a certain day a month, or I don't know, just something like that where and I don't make these decisions, but I'm just saying, I think, I've heard something like that before, and maybe there's something that, you know, one day a month or something, the city dump could have a
free day.
kind of bring in, whatever you got, bring it, no charge, that kind of thing, and maybe even coordinate a few spots every so often to say, we'll be here at this spot with a truck, you know, bring it and that kind of thing. But I do think that might be, well, I would be frustrated too if I had 40 tires up my alley and said I was going to be charged it.
Well, the city is
And I
good
had to
about their
unload
trucks.
12 out of my dumpster to put my trash in.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dumping.
And 2 of them were big old truck tires.
That's where they have you.
Get inside.
So it makes
the
you think
damn
it was a
dumpster,
business
get
or
'em out.
something. Yeah. Makes you kind of think it
Well,
was.
it's some of these fly-by-night tire companies that
Right.
comes by and drops them off. I don't know what it is.
So besides, you know, trying to help maybe keep the alleys in shape or whatever, are there any other, is there any, am I hearing that everybody's okay with the mixed use, the businesses next door
Sure.
to the houses,
I
and
mean, it's been there forever.
any other ideas at all how we could help that neighborhood, you know, economically or aesthetically or, you know, or is it just fine?
I'm still kind of at a loss about this light commercial because it's only been about 2 years ago that I was in code enforcement, and they were designating everything to the west of the alley of Johnson and Lincoln Street as being a single family or multifamily. And so this light commercial for that whole area really kind of surprises me, because then it changes what can be done in those areas. Is, you know, what's allowed, I guess what I'm trying to say. Because if it's residential, you know, there's a lot of things that's not allowed in there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's
It's
been
much more
changed, but I'm
restrictive.
surprised that it has been changed.
It hasn't been changed in, what, 4 years or something?
I think there's some little pockets of planned developments, but
But the overall.
I'll tell you what, how about I print you off do you have an email address or anything like that?
My wife does. I don't mess with the
Yeah.
computer. But no, I'm content with whatever's going on right now then. I'm just opposed to putting in the brick driveways and the off-street parking requirements that's gonna mess up what we've got. My father has a corner lot over there that whenever that was developed, there was no driveway to the front of that house. The driveway was at the back of the house, which in most of these houses, you look on every corner, there was either an apartment complex or a little grocery store, not an apartment, but a duplex, or a little grocery store. That's the way those were developed, and a garage at the back, which doesn't meet the city's requirements for the length of travel you have to put a garage on the backyard.
Yeah,
But-
all those kinds of things are what we call grandfathers.
Pre-existing, that's right. But we have parked on the side, on that curb. We don't come up to the street, but every so often we'll get an inspector that comes by and wanting to clear out the area. And so we'll move it for whatever length of time.
Because you're parked on the street?
Because we parked on what would be city right-of-way, between the sidewalk and the curb, to keep those streets where the traffic can flow down through. I mean, we have to maintain that. We don't want it to look that bad either. But we'd much rather have the cars up off the street where possible. And because like I say, there's not a driveway in front. Most of the traffic parks in David's driveway thinking they're at my dad's house.
Well, there's certainly no requirements to have brick driveways, but we do have requirements for any land use to have some off-street parking.
Well, if we went to something like that, and let's use that corner lot as an example, why couldn't I put asphalt on the city right-of-way? I have to maintain it, and it wouldn't be a permanent structure in the event you needed to dig down through there.
Well, right now you can. Well, yeah, right now you can. And like I said, we were just hearing that there were some, concerns about taking yards out, replacing them with parking lots.
Some places would have to, yeah, I'm sure. With the traffic I see in the people's front yards, I know they would, yeah. And that's just within a few blocks of my dad's house.
So you're saying they're already parking in the front yard?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
on dirt now, because it's probably not grass. It's
Right,
parking.
yeah, exactly. And
Okay,
they've
so
been
I
doing it
guess
for years.
I'm confused. What would be the difference
And it being
between,
asphalt.
between it being asphalt and I would prefer to see the asphalt as compared to people parking in what should be grass. That's just my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
Right, if that would be approved, I'm sure that, you know, people might comply with that rather than to pull out on the street or have to park a half a block away from their house on the street.
I think one thing that we talked about was, especially in some of the older homes, if they were turned into a business or a bed and breakfast or something like that, you know, right
Commercial
now, on
use.
some of our streets, it's fun to drive down the brick street and see the big trees and everything, and if a house sold and someone decided to make it a bed and breakfast and then they tore up all the trees and paved the front yard, it would really take away from the historic look.
Well, sure.
So that's kind of what, that's the
But-
way.
but it addressed
that's
it
the way
pretty
I was
broadly.
thinking about, you know, if some of these great, big, there's some really large houses all in this neighborhood. If they became a bed and breakfast, I wouldn't want them
There
to
wouldn't
tear up
be
the
any parking.
trees and, you know, pave the front yard because it was going to become a bed and breakfast.
But they wouldn't have parking either, unless they use their neighbor's front parking areas on the street. You know, we wouldn't have access to off-street parking unless you cleaned out the house next door and made a parking lot and bought it too.
Is backyard parking allowed?
Certain-
Yeah.
so-
In certain-
And that's one of the solutions that some have done, where you access from the alley and use the back, which is preferable. I mean, from what Beth was saying in terms of keeping the character of the neighborhood. You know, for those who do, you know, live in these neighborhoods and try
tell you what
and
they
have a
need.
nice,
They ain't gonna tell them.
walkable neighborhood with
It's not
sidewalks and front lawns and trees.
Yeah, but that ain't
It's nice to have that, maintain that. So there's other solutions that paving is right.
Can I ask a question? It's a little bit different off of that. The steel buildings, you know, like the steel buildings that are businesses here, say the person is retiring, they want to sell their business, whoever buys it, is that building going to have to be, the facade on the outside redone, or if it's a steel building, or it can be sold as a steel building?
We don't really go by property ownership. It's, if the building was there and it's existing, nothing, just because somebody sells it to somebody else doesn't mean, okay, the new guy has to do something. It's,
Or the old guy doesn't have to change it to whatever the standards are, he can sell it as is?
no, we call all of that, you know, we call that a legal, non-conforming use.
So would that be the same way with trailer homes that are throughout the area? They're legally there, and to be like uprooted because they're a trailer home, you know, they're there. That's not going to happen, is it?
No, anything that's existing,
Uh-huh.
it would not have to do anything.
Okay, and if the
to
trailer
come
home, if they sold their trailer home to somebody else, they could buy the trailer home, right?
Transfer of ownership doesn't trigger anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
property ownership doesn't matter.
Unless it sits vacant for a year.
Right.
Unless it sits vacant for a year, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is
That's a
a
difference.
stipulation.
Okay, that's a stipulation. If it sits vacant for a year, then what happens?
You have to meet the code.
Well,
Then you'd have to meet that standard and possibly the building torn down or re-facaded or whatever.
no.
Okay.
For land uses, only there are a couple things that, if you have a business in the design standard area, not this residential area, but if you had a business that was vacant for more than a year and then was remodeled, I don't know.
Was redeveloped.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Was redeveloped into a different type use, and where the exterior was being modified and all those kinds of things, then that would kick in some of the design standards, you know, like the lights and the trees and the walkways, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But that's the remodeling and reuse of a vacant building that hasn't been vacant for more than a year, that's being redeveloped into another use where they're changing the facade and changing the use and that kind of thing.
Like the Marriott.
Yeah, exactly, just like the Marriott.
And so, oh, I'm sorry. go ahead.
But if we're talking about a house, let's say there's a house or manufactured home, whatever, that somebody's been trying to rent for whatever reason, it hasn't been rented in a year, and then they finally get somebody to rent it. Nothing happens there, or if they say they had to move and they've been trying to sell it for a year and it's been vacant for a year, that doesn't trigger anything. There's no time limit on a legal existing land use.
I heard you say something about lights and trees. I mean, in other words, if somebody comes in and removes the property for new use, the city can come in and say, you need to move the trees, take the trees out, or you're going to have a certain kind of value. I need a city standard or something, is it? And I can't say.
If a building that has been vacant and unused for more than a year, somebody comes in, buys it, totally redoes it for a new use where they're doing exterior improvements and those kinds of things, then yes, they would be subject to put in, have what we call the walkway improvements, where there's trees, sidewalks, and lights.
Trees, so what about, okay,
Now sidewalks are, they're required anyway by code. So,
Right.
those might already be there, or if they weren't, they should be required anyway, just through the normal permit.
okay, now I've heard something about, I missed the very first of the meeting. I see you got a rectangle there circled in black, and then you got a smaller one down here.
Mhm.
Now, is that included with the area up here that's gonna be, I presume, that
No.
redevelopment?
Let me explain what these two different things are. This one down here is the part of the residential neighborhood that tonight's meeting was for.
Right.
And so, the invitations that went out for tonight, went out for this meeting, went out for this
Okay.
group. And we drew this one up here to indicate that this is, when people talk about the study plans, about, what might happen with,
Multi-use venue,
Exactly.
hotel.
Yeah.
hotel, that sort of thing, that's all up here north of it. And so that's why that's differentiated from that, and this is not included in that. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't have to worry about later on, after they start all this downtown, and coming in and saying, well, we have good intentions, get changed down the road.
Okay, to take out trees. That's
Nobody
pretty
intends
simple.
to take out any of your trees. That's-
Okay, if we wanted to put back a tree, I like elm trees. They die, but they're easier to keep.
I mean, within your own property, you can do whatever you want in terms of landscape.
Even in that 14-foot area from the,
Within the city right of way, if you want to put in a tree, you'll need to have it reviewed by the city staff.
then that's what you're saying is, then you hit the design standards.
No, that is not gonna trigger you to do anything else.
Well, if I was replacing an existing elm tree,
It would
there's,
just simply
most
need
of
to
those
be
have,
reviewed, and Kelly would sign off on it, and you go on your way.
You're saying if I want to plant a tree in my front yard, I have to have it?
No, I didn't say that. I said in the city right of way.
Okay, which leads to,
the 14
okay,
foot.
what is the city right of way? I've got a sidewalk, and then I've got about, 12 foot from my sidewalk to the street. Is
The intent is
that
to
city right of way?
pedestrian walkway. I don't know what yours is.
Okay, now I've got 2 elm trees,
Yeah.
I guess would be considered on the city right of way.
Right.
And they come along later, say, well, we never intended to do this, but your trees are on the city right of way, even though they've been there for 25, 30 years or longer. And we've decided that since that's city right of way, we have the right
Well-
to have those trees taken out.
The answer to that question is, technically the answer to that question is yes. If the city wanted to remove those trees from the right of way, they can, it's their right of way. But that would completely go against everything that I think we want to try to have as far as downtown in this area, or any neighborhood for that matter. I mean, trees are, I think we probably all agree trees are hard to come by in this area anyway.
Yeah.
And the last thing we would want to do is rip out a whole block or two of trees or anything. But there are some times where we've had problems where a limb, maybe hangs down or
Right.
something like that, where the city will say, we're having a problem with that limb, and some of the the delivery trucks, or that land is getting really close to a utility wire or something like that. So, you know, they'll either ask him to trim it, or if you can't trim it, a lot of times they'll come out and trim it for you. But I don't see any way that the city would come and
Okay.
just have you remove the whole.
They'll send you the
strip.
bill, too.
This downtown revitalization takes off. I mean, it works like gangbusters, and you get the baseball field and hotels and restaurants, okay? And all these people start flooding into downtown. When they come along, they kind of did a survey of our neighborhood, and they said, well, because of this revitalization downtown, your street, we've decided to bear more traffic. So if we go ahead and widen that street, might help with the downtown congestion per se.
Yeah.
Okay. There goes my trees, right?
No.
There goes my right, well,
Let's just follow that out. Let's say the city is looking at doing something like that, which I don't ever really know why, because those,
I don't either.
because of the
what they're doing now.
interchange and the way the roads are there, it's gonna be very unlikely that any of those streets would be any kind of a route to relieve any traffic, because they basically just stay there. I mean, there's no way, they don't go anywhere.
I understand.
So, but let's just say there was let's go across the highway to the area on the west side. You know, a couple of those three streets go through. Let's say they, you know, to relieve traffic, we think Crockett or whatever that street is, that goes, we're gonna widen that to a 5-lane, 6-lane road, you know.
Well,
That's too far.
You know, they have the
thinking about
ability
crossing.
to do that, but I can guarantee
Anyway, that's another street.
everybody up and down that street would just
That'd be terrible.
go crazy.
That'd be
well,
terrible.
surely.
And there wouldn't be,
I'm not
a
trying
city
to-
commission, there wouldn't be a city commission that would do that.
We would never advocate for
Yeah.
anything like that.
Okay.
And neither would a city planner. I mean, I know apparently you don't have a high regard for city planners.
We're having a meeting here, and I'm just bringing up, you know,
Well,
what
and
if.
I'm glad
Because, you know,
I'm glad
I've
you
had
did.
people come to me and say, you know, this is bad, what's happening, and they're gonna do this, and they're gonna do that. And I'm just trying to get, find out,
Yeah,
you know, what's fact from fiction.
and that's.
And I know it sounds ridiculous what I'm proposing, but, you know,
No,
I'm throwing it out there, saying, what if?
There's nothing ridiculous about it, but
I've
I wouldn't propose doing something like that. I would never recommend something like that. And I think what we've got really is, TxDOT come heck or high water are gonna maintain those dispersal streets, those 4, you know, the 2 one-ways north and 2 one-ways south. And those are your traffic dispersal
Right.
streets. And if anything happens, you know, it's gonna be on those roads, not the neighborhood roads.
And so, yes, sir.
On them right of ways, isn't there a lot of electrical wires and stuff buried in those?
Normally it's in the alley.
Well, mine's not, mine's on the south side of my right of way on 15th Street. There's electrical wires, there's gas lines, there's water lines, everything. Some of them in the street, some of them on the right of way.
Yeah, well, it's different all over town. I mean, it just depends
Yeah.
on where you are, but a
Well-
lot of times they've tried to have the utilities in the alleys. But there are, where I live, all the utilities are in the street.
Well, I know every time that gas line busts, they come out and throw them little orange signs
Yeah.
down in the ground, electrical.
Now, 15th goes under the highway, right?
Well,
Right
these
here
electrical
beside
lines
us.
are buried in dirt down the right of way.
But that's what I'm thinking, it may be because 15th cuts under the highway.
That was the old phone lines from the old Santa Fe building to the new Santa Fe terminal.
Well, I was there when they dug the ditch and
Yeah.
put those lines in.
Yeah, that was all
So
their
they've been
phone
there a long time.
communication.
Well,
Oh, it's not really that long, not quite as old as ours.
well, so folks, we're almost out of our time tonight.
Good.
I want to ask one more. I want to ask one more time, one more question before we say goodnight. And that is, in keeping with our conversation about the neighborhood where you live, is there, and we've taken note of the things that you'd like addressed, the broken light pole and the street light that often doesn't work. Is there anything else in your neighborhood that you'd like the city to take a look at in terms of, I don't like this is going on, this is dangerous, this is bad, needs to be fixed? Is there anything else in your neighborhood that you'd like
More
the,
like about the trash receptacles, the commercial properties in the area.
okay? And what about,
They're
They
using
need to have their own
Right.
trash receptacles.
and not use residential.
okay,
The private receptacles.
okay, anything else about this?
Robin, can I ask a couple questions, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, say y'all do get the ball field built and all this good stuff and everything. Okay, you stop at 10th, I'm on 15th. Well, I'll be able to hear the roar of the crowd at night about 10, 11 o'clock. And all that noise they're gonna be making building the darn thing. Cause I'm getting to be old and I'll probably be more grumpier than what I am with old age coming.
And if we're losing.
But you'll get hard of hearing soon. Well, I'm hard of hearing. I'll hear that. Walking that ball hits me upside the head.
Well, that might help you sleep better if it did.
You know, I'm concerned
You're
about
concerned about
the sound and the noise. Another thing, well, I'm concerned, the main thing I'm concerned about is the city's got the option for immediate domain at any time in the future. And I'm just concerned about that.
Okay, well, so let's ask the question, is the city planning to invoke eminent domain on any of the homes in this area?
The eminent, and first of all, I understand the concern about the eminent domain, I really do. Because other places have tried to use it, but in Texas, they went so far as to have their own special legislative action in Texas that says using eminent domain for private development is illegal. Now, there are, any lawyer can tell you that there are ways that you can still do public-private, developments, and you still may have the opportunity to do that. But I'm here to tell you that the city of Amarillo, there's absolutely nothing about eminent domain that will ever be used for any of this. If it's, the city commission has said it, we've said it, and I don't see that, we answer that a lot, and it's not going to be used. It won't, it's not going to happen.
Well, you say that.
We've been asked to say it, we've been asked to write it, and we do.
You say it now, but 10 years down the road, you might say, we got all these people over here, I'll just take Jim's house and make a parking lot.
Yeah, I understand, but the city of Amarillo, in its entire history, has done everything that they can do to never use eminent domain, because that's been brought up several times and
Never?
no, I say that's what they've tried in their history. They've tried to never use that if at all
Oh, never
possible.
tried.
Didn't get away with it.
But, yeah.
I'm sure they used it when they made I-40 though.
Where's federal?
Yes, sir.
I've got the Coca-Cola bottling deal downtown. I heard somebody say that was going to be raised or torn down.
We just don't know at this point. There's 3 different land use scenarios that have the multi-purpose venue and multiple locations. Those are things that we will be exploring.
Or Amarillo hardware.
It's just
What about Amarillo?
What about?
Yeah.
Okay, and so one last question. Yes, sir.
And the reason that I came is just because of the ballpark. That was my concern. I'd like to ask Melissa the point, the whole estimate that they plan to spend this money on the ballpark. What's the bottom line, the money? How much?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
Well, it's going to be, I bet it'll be over $17 million.
I'm just not going to toss out a number because we haven't done it.
If you know, let me ask you this, Melissa. If you know how to draw the plans and know what's going on about baseball, why did you make those remarks on the paper
What remarks?
about the people would come in to the ballpark, but 3,700 people would be coming into the ballpark, estimated it. And there was free, like the free baseball given at the dealers. They never give anything free. It's in the paper. I have the paper. I'll show it to you.
I didn't make any remarks about the free entrance to the donuts. Well, the only number we published was what United League published, which is I think, average of 2,700 in attendance, and United League publishes that number.
But they said the dealers were in trouble because they let a lot of the people go in free,
Yes,
is what I
yes,
read.
yes.
I read that too.
And let me say this much. You're giving us architect deals, and I'll say this, and I'm sorry that I have to say it, but it's what I came for. You give architectural things that you have gone and we've done to Fort Worth, and you think, like I have said before, Fort Worth is not Amarillo. And if you go down to Fort Worth right now, you don't see nobody in that downtown. But you go down to the Cowtown, and then you go down Cowtown, and you see the people there.
That is downtown.
Manny, I just.
No, that
It is now.
no.
If it's not
Downtown Fort Worth.
I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to tell you, I mean, sometimes that when you hear big sweeping statements like that, I was just down in Fort Worth about 3 weekends ago. And
I know you were.
And it was packed.
I
There
know
were
you were.
people all over the
Friday,
street
Saturday,
downtown.
Friday and Saturday.
No, it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
No, I don't think so. Must have been somewhere else. I was there. I was there when you were there.
I was there
I was
too
there the
for the
same
state
day you
fair.
were there.
Okay, and
Here's,
so,
just a fact. Sundance Square gets 10 million visitors a year. Bass Hall alone gets 1 million visitors a year. So that's a lot of people.
Who is
of
that?
course, that's not,
Downtown Fort Worth.
they're talking about Fort Worth.
Where you got 8 million people live there.
You said
Yeah.
the
And
Fort
so-
Worth, the
It's a
downtown
different
Fort Worth?
city.
I said the stockyards.
200,000 here.
And,
Well,
and
they
so,
consider it downtown.
so folks, we're at our limit for how long we can have the room that the church has given for our use tonight. I wanted to remind you that when all the meetings are over, we're going to collate all the comments and questions and put them up on downtownamarillo.com. And so that's all one word, downtownamarillo.com. And Charlene, I think you have one of these, and so if you
Yes,
want-
I do.
Okay. And so on this page is everybody's phone numbers and email addresses in terms of the folks from the city and the organizations.
Oh, that thing's busy all the time. Consider something like that.
That's Irma's.
And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight.
And we can
Thank
make
you
some
very
questions.
much.
Thank you.
If I can figure out
Maybe
my way to
Thursday.
get back to my
We
car.
ought to.
You see what I'm talking about?